This is John Sarver, and welcome to the My Solar Story series, sponsored by the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association and the Michigan Solar Users Network. Please mute yourself during the presentation. After the presentation, you can unmute yourself to ask Joe some questions. And tonight's speaker is Joe Hess, who's kind of a pioneer in Meridian Township with getting approval for his 5 kilowatt system on his condominium. Here, actually, Joe's kind of down the road and around the corner from me, and I think it's a great application. But he's going to talk a little about his system, but actually focus in on the process he went through with his condo association. And with that, let me do some screen sharing. I don't know why that happened like it did.
Okay. Well, let's see. Something's happened here.
Oh, here we go.
A new page popped up.
Let's see.
And I can only see 3 other people. So.
Okay, here we go, Joe. We're ready. Go ahead.
Okay, well, something's screwy here. It says need resources during Zoom. I don't know how that got in there. Well, anyway, my wife and I moved into Sapphire Lake subdivision in 2000. And we had always lived in single family homes before we moved here. So moving into a subdivision with a homeowners association was something that was totally new. We'd never experienced that before. And it took us a while to finally understand all the details of that. And on the possibility that some who were tuned in on this conversation are not familiar with what a site condo means, and I certainly wasn't didn't realize until we'd been here for some time. Anyway, each homeowner, each resident lives in a condo and owns the condo and the surrounding lot. So these are individual single and duplex homes that are all tied together through this homeowners association. And each of us contribute monthly fees to the association into a common budget, which is managed by an elected board of directors and with professional assistance. And our homeowner fees pay for lawn and landscaping services, for snow removal, and every 25 years, the roof is to be replaced, and that's paid from the homeowners association budget. And we also pay for professional manager of the subdivision to aid the board of directors in managing our collective affairs. So that's the environment in which we had our experience in trying to engage in solar. I had been following renewable energy and reading about solar, but I had thought that solar systems were primarily most appropriate for people in southern more sunnier parts of the United States. But with the advent of better technology, and it was able to produce more electricity per solar panel, and the price coming down and so on, it became evident that the northern part of the country, like the Midwest, was now appropriate for the installation of solar panels. So we started seriously looking into this possibility in October of 2018, and got estimates from 7 different installers, some just over the internet and others by personal visit and so on. And we were about ready to proceed, and I checked with the business manager of our subdivision and asked him if there was if the association had a solar policy. He said no. He said, and you can't do anything until your subdivision has a solar policy. So that meant that conversation started with the homeowners board of directors, and I began looking and reading and gathering more information, and it was, we discovered that there was no such, that the state of Michigan did not have a model policy for homeowners association. And one of the board members went online and found that the state of Massachusetts had one. And so he downloaded and copied that and presented it to the board, and the board said, well, let's use that one and adapt it for our subdivision. In the meantime, I had been drafting ideas based on what I'd read and so on, and ended up putting parts of this Massachusetts document together with some of the drafts that I had done. And finally, by May of 2019, we were in a position where the board was ready to submit it to an attorney to make sure it was drafted in proper legal language and so on. But they said, the homeowners association is not going to pay for this. You've got to pay for it if you want to install. So I thought about that, and finally decided that, well, you know, it's going to cost around $500 or so, but it's a lot of the work has been done with these drafts that we have. So let's go ahead. I agreed to pay for it. And the attorney made the final draft, presented to the board. They accepted it. And then I accepted it. I paid for the attorney fees, and then we could proceed. So the that was done so that in May and early June, so that we could get the installation scheduled and started in the latter part of June. So that's when we began enjoying the benefits of the system with connection to the consumer's grid, so that we could take advantage of the solar panels producing most of the electricity we use. So what's the experience that we've had since then? Well, it's once we got all the little bugs worked out with the first connection, it's worked beautifully. It's trouble-free. There's software installed with it so that I can monitor what the solar panels are producing every day, and how much has been produced cumulatively. And our installers, Absolute Solar, and Rob Karcher is one of the partners in that business. They can monitor it in their office and see how our panels are doing. So we have day-to-day ability to monitor the production of electricity by our solar system. Now, so what? Now, let's see, John, can you put up the photo of the roof solar system?
Yep, it's up.
Okay. Well, there's something on my screen here. I can't see it. So
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Yeah, the rest of us can see the picture with actually the 2 solar panels.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't see it. I see a screen.
John, I
that says
can't
need
see it either.
resources.
Oh,
Need resources on using Zoom during COVID-19.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too.
okay. Well,
Well, I don't know how to get rid of that. Okay.
huh.
Whatever you did, it worked.
Well, yeah, I assume everybody sees all of us, right?
That's correct, but we don't see his screen.
No. Let me try that once more to see if it.
You put the photo up?
Do folks see the picture of the unit?
Oh, there it
Yes,
is.
now we
There
see
you
it.
got it.
Oh, super.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what I did, but it worked.
There are 12 panels over the garage and another 4 on the south facing roof over the front porch and front room. So there's a total of 16 panels that come out about 5 kilowatt hours in capacity. So over the past 14 months, the monitoring system shows that our panels have generated 6.3 milliwatt hours of electricity, has saved over 4 tons of CO2 emission, and it has reduced our 12-month electricity bill by $471. That's compared to the 12 months since installation versus the 12 months prior to installation. And we took advantage of the federal tax credit, and it saved us $4,000 on our 2019 federal income tax bill. And so that was a big plus and one of the attractive options. It's gone down at 4% for 2020, and it's gradually phasing down unless it gets renewed. So, so that's our experience. As I say, it's trouble-free, and we really enjoy the sunny days of summer, and are very happy with what our system is doing. So after it was installed, I got emails from the National Solar Organization inquiring would we like to be part of a national solar tour in October. And this is a program that is organized and carried out all across the country to try to familiarize people with the benefits, the details of installing a solar system. So we participated in that. And John, if you got that next photograph, it shows the solar tour we had an information table out in front of the garage, and so hand out information, and people could ask questions about the panels and what they were like, and you know, technical details. Rob was there for most of the time and could answer details that could best be answered by an installer who knows all the technology and so forth.
If I remember,
there were about
that you had quite a few people.
40 people came.
Yep.
Pardon?
Well, I just remember you had quite a few people come.
Yeah. There were about 40 people came by for that open house. We had refreshments and people come and talk, look, pick up some literature and so on, and pass on, and others would come. So I passed out invitations to all of our neighbors in the subdivision, inviting them to come, and many did. And after that open house, two other residents of our subdivision decided to install solar panels on their homes, and two others who live elsewhere in the area also moved ahead with adopting solar systems. So that was encouraging to see that there's been that much, and I'm hoping that now that the policy is all developed and a lot of the time-consuming details that we went through, now that they're taken care of, that it'll be much easier for everybody else in our subdivision to move ahead. So did you want to show that slide, John, of the solar tour? Yeah. Okay, now it's the next one after that.
Oh, do you see it? It's not coming up on my screen.
Well, I can see the first slide on mine of the panels. And
Yeah,
the next one was of the garage, the table, and a few people standing talking on the driveway during the solar tour.
Yeah. Oh, well. Are you ready for some questions, Joe?
Well, not quite. There was one more thing I wanted to mention. After all we've gone through us over the past several months, I thought it would be helpful to put together the series of steps that a member of our subdivision would need to go through in order to get the approval and be able to install solar. So I was going to show that if it's not too hard to get it up.
Well, can you share it? I can do multiple sharing if you can load it up on your. I don't have it.
Oh no, I passed it on to you.
Oh,
and
okay.
we saw it. We ran it through the other day when we were doing the dry run.
Let me try that again.
I don't have it where I could. Okay, there's the first one. Okay.
Well, there's the. Does everybody see
the
picture of the solar home tour?
Yeah. This is there you are. That's the solar open house with some of the folks that stopped by. And then the next is the document I put together and distributed to people in our subdivision so they would know the steps that one needed to go through in our situation. So they could do it much more efficiently than we did. It took several months for us to do it. Now somebody could do it get the approval within a month or so. So if you want to just move through those, John, I think
You see
this
phase
is
one now,
phase
right?
one, the investigation system. And it takes you down to, you're ready for installation. The homeowner submits the application form, an installation plan to the association board. And if the issue of property insurance came up, and I learned through our home insurance company that all we need to do is add that on the policy. There's no additional cost for including the solar system in your hazard insurance policy. Then, based on the policy was adopted here, after the application is approved, the homeowner and the president of the homeowners association sign the notarized solar panel responsibility agreement. The homeowner then takes the document to Ingham County Register of Deeds, pays $30 recording fee. The document is then filed with a condo master deed, and a copy was filed with Spartan Services, who was the business manager at that point in time. And the contractor submits the installation plan to the Meridian Township Building Code Compliance Office. When all approvals and requirements are complete, then you can move to phase 3, which is the next slide. The homeowner completes financial arrangements with contractor and schedules the installation date. After installation, there's a final inspection by Meridian Township Code Compliance to verify proper installation. Now, those are all the steps we went through, but now for anybody else that wants it, there's a roadmap of what you have to do based on the current policy. So anyway, thank you, John. I'm glad you could put that up.
Yep.
Now, my final comments really have to do with what about the future? What could be done in the state of Michigan to facilitate the adoption of solar systems or other renewable energy systems by people all across the state? And one of the questions is whether or not the state of Michigan should have a model condo solar policy document that could be downloaded and adapted to other homeowners associations to fit their local situation needs. What are the state legal requirements, if there are? I don't know what they are, but anyway, that was one issue. And the other is whether or not legislation could be passed that facilitates and makes it much easier for homeowners to purchase and use and have installed renewable energy systems. So that's work for the future that I think will make it a lot easier, because the easier it is, more people will adopt it. So Michigan, I think with our current governor and maybe with a little cooperation from the legislature, could really make it much easier for the dissemination of solar systems across the state. So that's all I have to say now. So if you want to move to Q&A session, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. That's been very helpful. Thank you for making the presentation tonight. And you know, Joe and I talked about his 2 recommendations the other day. And you may notice there's 2 John Freemans up here. I'm obviously John Sarver, and John Freeman is also on the screen here. He's our executive director at GLREA, and I logged in as John Freeman, so that's why I'm listed as John Freeman.
But he's smart.
We are pursuing that.
If I may ask a question for Joe. Joe, my name's Tom Parizella. I'm a member of the Isaac Walton League of America. I happen to be in the Rockville, Maryland chapter, and right now I'm living in Pennsylvania, so I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I'm also on their National Energy Committee with Bob Stegmeyer, and I just wave hi to Bob. But the questions I have are, were your hurdles as far as regulations primarily with the homeowners association or with the township, the county? Where did you run into problems?
Well, as far as the township is concerned, they were fine. Their only role was to make sure that the installed system made all the code requirements of the township, so it was. My experience was it was the homeowners association. It took education and a lot of time to finally reach the point where a policy could be drafted and put in proper legal form, and then let me pay the fees, and we could go ahead and install. So I think it's a lot of these problems are at the lower level, but I feel certain that if laws were improved that made it easier and put some incentives in for homeowners or homeowners association and other organizations to make it easy and as trouble-free as possible to go the route of renewable energy.
And my situation was a little different and difficult because instead of doing a roof-mounted system like you did, we have 5 acres, and I was going to put a 10 kilowatt ground-mounted system. And the minute you start getting off the house, I was mentioning to the other John earlier, the minute you get off the house, off the roof, and put it on the ground, at least when you're building a house, you run into something called area of disturbance, how much of the ground you disturb.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the townships are worried about water runoff, stormwater, management, which is important. And they haven't quite understood yet that if you have a ground mounted system, you only have a few posts in the ground. You're really not like putting another roof or something where you're going to get a lot of runoff.
Yeah.
The water that comes off the panels gets absorbed by the ground underneath. So I was wondering if anybody there has had any experience with that kind of thing, where it is a conflict between a good conservation stormwater management, requirement and a good for the ecology, solar energy requirement. And they haven't seemed to have worked that out, at least not in this area.
Yeah. Well, Rob, you've probably had a lot of experience with installing ground-based systems and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So would you have any comments on that?
Yeah, with ground mounts, I mean, what we ran into, I think it is very much, locality to locality, different townships. Honestly, it can be hit or miss depending on, that particular person you're talking to and who's kind of making those local decisions. But for the most part, it's been, zoning issues, setbacks and zoning, and then also if you're in a floodplain. So most counties should have those floodplain maps. And so, the only times we have ever had issues is if you happen to be in that, basically the worst area of that floodplain. And then that can pose problems, but at least, for the Meridian Township area, which is where a majority of, what we do, the floodplain zone has been small enough to where a vast majority of residents don't have to worry about that. So, I mean, honestly, ground mounts have been, at least from our experience, possibly even easier to get approval. But it's so very hyper local with how these rules are applied. So it kind of just depends. But typically what we found, at least, that if you make the effort of actually going into that local township office or the county office and really sitting down with them and explaining it, we've always had success in essentially getting them to understand the nature of this. And so we eventually have always gotten approval. Similar to when we had to go to your HOA meetings, but just obviously a little bit different. So I wouldn't discourage people from considering ground mounts, and the installer should be able to work with the locality to make sure that, they're satisfied, with the location. So that's kind of been our experience. I would say it very much can come down to your, your local county or municipality. Hope that helps.
this is John Gorley, the third John on the call. I have a ground mount system, as some of you might know, and I had no trouble whatsoever getting permission to build it. Lima Township is where it is, and all they needed was to give me a zoning permit and make sure that it satisfied the setback.
Yep. That's typically it from what we've seen.
Yeah, and in our case, I think it was a little different because we were building a house, and the township rules were if you stayed under an acre of area of disturbance, then your permit process is fairly innocuous. If you go over 1 acre, which the ground mount, according to their idea, in other words, they're just looking at the total area around it, not just the post on the ground, then we would have been over an acre. Once you get over an acre, they require the EPA to get in. It's like you're building a strip mall or something, So we decided to wait, and what we're going to do is we're going to wait till the house is finished, till that permit goes away, and then when nobody remembers about it, we may apply for another permit. There won't be a zoning problem. We've got 5 acres, so we won't have any setback problems or anything. But it's just this idea of they were concerned about the stormwater management if you were over an acre. So we're just going to stand back and wait.
But be careful.
I think if you're near agriculture too, there could be some type
of. Remember, if you don't build it this year, the investment tax credit will go down to 22% beginning of next year from 26% this year. So keep that in mind.
We did keep that in mind, but there's another thing that entered into it. The cost of building the house is pretty substantial, and we want to see where we are when the house is all done, of course, before we put the money into there. The other thing is, and I mentioned.
Can I just make one more quick comment? Sure. Obviously, if you can roll it into your mortgage, if you're having a mortgage for your new house, then that's obviously the lowest form of borrowing money you can get. So.
That's true, but the other thing we're looking at, and we're actually going to have to get some data. I don't have enough data right now. Before I looked at buying this 10 kilowatt array, I did an analysis of, how many kilowatt hours we use per year, how many megawatt hours we use per year, how many we were going to generate with the 10 kilowatt array based on, you can go out online and find, by your zip code, how many sunny days and what you can expect in terms of, a number of kilowatt hours. But then I found out another good thing, which actually, again, works a little bit against the solar. We're going to be heating the house with heat pumps, and our local energy company, Pico, says if you have a heat pump, from the beginning of October till the end of May, they have a drastic reduction in the cost per kilowatt hour. They're trying to get, their load evened out throughout the year instead of just all the air conditioning in the summer. So my original payback was about 8 years based on the rebates and everything else. And by the time I got through looking at that lower rate, and by the way, that lower rate not only is for the heat pumps, it covers everything in the house, all your electricity usage. It wound up being like about 17 or 18 years for a payback. So I'm waiting to see the reality of what my electric bills are going to be. I'll redo the analysis. I would still like to go ahead and do this, but I'm not sure until I see the numbers.
I'll just correct myself and say that the ground mount I put in is in Dexter Township, not Lima. My property spans the two townships, and I had forgotten that it's on the Dexter side.
Other questions or comments?
John, this is John Freeman. The documents you sent me a couple of days ago, did that include that little PowerPoint that Joseph provided tonight?
No, it was a different document.
Because we may, with Mr. Hess's permission, I wouldn't mind taking that little PowerPoint and maybe turning it into kind of a, like a how-to approach for other people that are in the same situation. So I'm assuming that would be okay.
Yeah, that's okay with me, but I question the need to file the Responsibility Act with the deed at the county courthouse. I think there's a simpler way of doing that, and I've included in that draft that I sent you, John, that I think is a simpler way to do it rather than having to go to the county courthouse and have your solar system attached to the deed. But I have I'm perfectly happy to share any of this that I've presented here tonight with anybody else where it might be useful.
Well, thank you very much. It will be very useful. We have Don King is with a solar company in Western Oakland County, and he's had a couple of clients that have bumped into these problems with homeowners association. So these documents will be very helpful.
Okay, well, you're certainly welcome to them. I'd be very happy if somebody else could use them, because it took a lot of time and discussion and so on to produce them. So you're welcome to them.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Joe, or any comments?
Yeah, this is Dave Thurston, and I'm very new to the solar world. Thank you, Joe, for your presentation. It was informative. I do have one question, and if the answer is yes, then I've got a follow-up question. My question is, did I see a Toyota Prius in your garage? In one of the
Oh, you did. Yeah, I drive a Prius, 2004. It's still running like a top. I will do anything I can to help mitigate climate change. It's the disasters are happening more and more almost every month, it seems, when you see the heat in the southwest part of the country, and the floods on the East Coast, and the predictions of more hurricanes all the time, and highest temperature ever recorded happening here and there. It's hard for me to understand how anybody that's paying attention to even on the ordinary daily news can't appreciate that we're moving ahead with one of the most serious challenges the human race and our planet has ever faced. And it's time that we all band together and do everything that each one of us can to try and bend that curve and flatten it out and try to start bending it down a bit.
So I guess my second question is, have you thought about going to a plug-in? If you've looked into how that would impact your solar use and how it would be compatible or not?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite understand your question.
I was asking, since you're inclined to have a car that's, very environmentally friendly, if you had considered possibly having a car that you plug into your solar and actually, charge your battery for your car off of your solar.
Well, at my age, I'm 94, and I don't have that much longer, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Okay.
I'm very happy with what we're doing right now.
Yeah, and the Prius is probably doing a great job.
Okay, thank you.
Dave, I'd like to comment on your question. As soon as we get through with this house construction, we convert the construction loan into a regular mortgage. I'm going to sell my current car, which is a 2009 Chevy Malibu, obviously running on gasoline. And I think what you can really do if you want to give people the idea of how much money they can save, not only helping the environment, but I figured out what it costs to run my Malibu, which has just a little 4-cylinder engine, no big V8 or anything, but not including tune-ups, not including oil changes. It cost me pretty close to about 11 to 12 cents a mile. And I'm going to be buying a Hyundai Kona EV, 100% battery. And I did the analysis of how far that runs on a battery charge, what I paid per kilowatt hour, and it's going to cost me about 1.5 cents per mile. Yeah. And there's no oil changes and no tune-ups.
Yeah.
So here again, I don't think people look at things in the long term. They don't also look at the numbers of the real costs. And when you talk about the real costs of gasoline engines, then you're talking about all the climate effects, and people don't even look at the money that's lost that way. But just the simplest straight numbers of how much does it cost you per mile to run an electric car. And that's not even with solar, by the way. That's just the rates I get from the power company. It's still a fraction of what it costs you to run a gasoline engine car.
Yeah.
Hi, Joe. This is Bob in Grand Rapids. I'm curious about your discussions with the condo association. Did you come up against any resistance to the idea of putting up solar panels? Did anybody say,
well,
ugly, we don't want them?
Not overt resistance. It was more, well, I think where they were coming from, they wanted to protect the association from any liability at all from homeowners installing solar panels. Some of them were worried about leaks in the roof and from the insulation. They just didn't know much about it. It was just lack of information, and I think they were just trying to be very cautious, and they were not in a hurry. I would have liked to have had the panels installed in February, but we couldn't move that fast. So I think it was just taking time to let them accommodate to the idea, and then finally finding a solution.
Did you have to talk with your insurance company to Take away the,
not the homeowners insurance company. I talked with our insurance, home insurance company, and they made it very simple. They said all we do is just add that to you as a rider to the policy, and there's no cost to it. So that was very simple.
okay.
And if the association had to do it with their insurance policy, I wasn't aware of it. They never said anything to me about it.
Just a word, if I may, on liability. And Robert, you're much more into this than I am, but my understanding is, I mean, there are different kinds of systems. One of the systems uses microinverters up on the panels, but they will not run unless you have a source of power, because they synchronize to the utility power. So if you ever had a problem with a power outage or something, nobody's going to get electrocuted with the power coming off the microinverters because they don't work. If you've got a central inverter and you're running DC down from the panels to a central inverter, then they require, in most of the places, they require a disconnect, because that is a liability. You could have, for example, the fire department will be coming into the house, and if there's a fire and they turn off the main power on the house, but if you got that DC power coming down from the panels, you must put in another disconnect switch before it goes into the house. So both of those are very well understood. I'm sure if you look into the codes anywhere, you will find what has to be done. So if it is installed correctly and it's installed per code, I would not expect any problems with an insurance company. It's like anything else. If you don't do it right, you're going to have a problem. If you do it with a qualified contractor who understands all these requirements, you should have no problems with any insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I'd add to that is you're correct. It does require that disconnect. Usually it's a knife blade. It's very obvious, PV disconnect. So anybody can instantly turn the system off. And the one nice thing about optimizers, keeping it DC, is that does make it easier to install batteries, because that is something, the prices are coming down exponentially, just like panels. So a lot of people, we've been doing a lot of optimizer DC systems with a central inverter lately, just because people want to plan for storage as those prices go down, because then you know batteries do require DC. So it makes it very easy to add storage as those prices become more attractive. But yeah, I mean, if it's done right, these systems are incredibly safe. I mean, there's so many points of grounding, multiple disconnects. I mean, there's like layers of safety as long as you're not cutting corners.
I'm sorry, Rob, you said that if you add batteries, that the electricity that goes into batteries must be direct current?
Correct.
That's across the board, all battery systems.
Well, at least with the majority of them, like, Solar Edge batteries, a lot of the ones that we use, Generac coming out with ones. But you can put a switch in to switch it back to AC if you needed to. But typically batteries, as it's going in, you're going to need that direct current. But the switch can be costly, and then you have to pay an electrician to add the switch. So if you keep it DC, it's a lot easier to integrate it.
The batteries are always DC, but they can be fed. It depends on the inverter that you buy. If you have a central inverter, some of the central inverters do have built-in battery charging for them. Other systems, you can use a hybrid. A hybrid. So there's all kinds of different ways to do it. The only thing that I did find out, I have a friend who's also an Isaac Walton member, and I helped him with a solar system down in South Carolina. And he charged the batteries through the inverter. He had a DC coming down, and he had an inverter. And even when the inverter turned off the charging to the batteries, he wound up overcharging the batteries, because if you have an inverter and you have the solar coming down and it's converting the DC to AC, it's also the inverter can actually work in reverse. And I didn't realize that until I looked into it. And what happened is, Once the batteries were fully charged, the battery charging part turned off, but the inverter was still running. And actually the inverter was feeding back into the batteries. And we took care of that. Again, weird situation. We took care of that because the inverter had the ability to use other relay controllers. And what he did when the power was coming way too much from the panels, and by the way, he was on a co-op and they would not allow him to feed back to the line. So this was another weird thing. But what we did is we used relays and just dropped out some of the panels to prevent the batteries from overcharging. There is not a technical problem that I found yet with the solar system that if you got the right person working on it, if you got the right contractor, it won't get fixed.
I wanted to say, Mr. Hess, you said you were 94? You're an inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah, we use the East Lansing Post Office, and but we're actually in Meridian Township and the Oklahoma School District.
Any other, this is John, any other further comments or questions before we adjourn?
Well, this is John Freeman. I think this has been wonderful. I want to thank Mr. Hess. But going back to the conversation about solar and batteries and an electric car, this is a suggestion maybe for a future solar story, that maybe we have a specific solar story about someone who has a system, like Craig Topher, for instance, who charges his car, his house, and off a solar system. So we could have that kind of conversation as well. I think that would be something of interest for folks.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Craig does a good job, and he's been a champion for electric vehicles and solar charging of electric vehicles. So he's been doing a lot of presentations. It would be a good solar story. Well, again, thank you again, Joe, and hey, thank you everybody for attending tonight, and we'll be back next week, and Bob Zink is going to kind of tell us his solar story next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Okay.
Everyone
Thank
stay
you, John.
safe.
Bye, everyone.
All right.